Well, in the last few weeks we celebrated St. David's Day. David of Wales and, of course, St. Patrick of Ireland. And that's why I asked the question, how many of you celebrated on the 23rd, St. George's Day? St. George of England. But not only England, Georgia, Portugal, Ethiopia, Violinas, Bulgaria, the 6th of May, Lithuania, and he also holds a special place amongst the hearts of the Greeks, the Palestinians, and Bosnia-Herzegovina. All of these places celebrate George. They don't necessarily know him as George of England, they know him as St. George. George was an early Christian martyr. We are told from his story that he was a soldier in the Roman army, in the Roman Empire. He hailed from Cappadocia, which is in present-day Turkey. And later, of course, he was sentenced to death because he would not renounce his Christian faith. And the story goes that although he was a Roman soldier, even an officer in the imperial army, he was beheaded in Palestina, which was a Roman province. And that was because he insisted on not rejecting his Christian faith. We're told also that George's father was a Roman citizen called Geronimus, and he was also born in Cappadocia, a part of contemporary or modern-day Turkey. We're told that George's mother was Polychronia, a Christian Palestinian, all being part of the Roman Empire. We often think when we talk about Roman citizens, we immediately think of somebody from some part of Italy. Of course, that wasn't the case. Citizens throughout the Roman Empire, members of different ethnic countries became Roman citizens. St. Patrick was a Roman citizen, not at the same time as George, but they share that in common, both Roman citizens. And George's family also shared Greek and Syrian background, which wasn't too difficult at that time because there was easy movement between all the provinces of the Roman Empire. And today, even in the Middle East, Christians both in Palestine and in Israel, and people from the Druze tradition in Syria, in Israel, in Lebanon, and many, many people from Muslim backgrounds celebrate and have a soft spot for St. George because he was a martyr to all of them of a monotheistic faith. Now, although George, he never came to England, there's no record of him ever arriving in England. Here he is, the patron saint of England. Why? Well, I understand it's most likely because of his association with the Crusades, that raised his status amongst the English. It is suggested he may have replaced St. Edward the Confessor, who might have been the patron saint of England, but that wasn't to be. England in the past, and even today, is known as Nazareth, England's Nazareth, or the dowry of Mary, because England was put under the protection of the Virgin Mother. And this was an old Catholic tradition that reflected the deep devotion to Mary that existed in medieval England. And even in 1893, Pope Leo XIII, speaking to English Catholic pilgrims, mentioned the wonderful filial love which burnt within their English forefathers towards Mary, the Mother of God. So we often forget that there was a huge, strong Catholic tradition in England. And even today, Catholicism is the fastest growing Christian faith in England. There are 6 million Catholics in England. And we often forget that so many English people have relatives or family related to Ireland. Sometimes the ones that we think, my God, he couldn't have a drop of Irish blood in his vein. Jacob Rees-Mogg. He's as Irish as the rest of you. Look at him. His great-great-great-grandmother was a victim of the Irish famine that fled to America, and eventually his mother married his mother was American and settled in England. So Jacob Rees-Mogg no doubt could get an Irish passport if he really wanted to. Penny Mordaunt, she of the sword. Do we all remember Penny Mordaunt? Now, I'm not talking about the Lady of the Lake that gave Excalibur to Arthur. I'm talking about Penny Mordaunt at King Charles' coronation. She was there holding that mighty sword throughout the whole coronation. Her family came from Wexford. And if you go down to Wexford, in one graveyard, I think it's her great-grandfather, was involved with the Land League with Michael Davitt. The Land League with Michael Davitt. And is celebrated in Wexford. Penny Mordaunt, there you go. Anyway, that's just a little bit of information you may never use again in your life. And to this day in Walshingham, every year there's a service dedicated to the Shrine of Our Lady and to the concept of England being Our Lady's dowry. And as we all know, the Cross of St. George adorns the flag of England, and it's also clearly identifiable within the Union flag. But many of us would even dream or think of celebrating George in England. Very few, I imagine. Possibly none. How many of us celebrate our English heritage, our family connection in England? In sport, it appears to be anybody but England, whether it's rugby, soccer, or whatever. The only time you might hear in England, I've often heard young people when you see them cheering for Ireland, and you say, why are you cheering from Ireland? You get, me nan's Irish. It would appear that half of England's nans are Irish. Now, it's interesting because the family I grew up in, we actually were led to believe, according to my father, that we were Irish Aborigines. We were here before anybody ever got here. And it never dawned on him, where did he think the name Hudson came from? Like, now there's a great Gaelic name for you, Hudson. I mean, it couldn't be more English. And when I went one time to Yorkshire, everybody looks like me in Yorkshire. A round face with tiny little eyes and a nose and lips. They all just like, I just see myself everywhere in Yorkshire. So it's quite obvious that's where the Hudsons came from. But my dad was having none of it. We were the Irish Aborigines, the Hudsons. Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember one time Nigel Playfair, who is the minister, one of our most renowned ministers, a brilliant scholar and a brilliant preacher. Nigel was minister in First Church on Rosemary Street. And Nigel declared one night at an event we were having. It was it was a poetry event, and Nigel had a great love for English poets, the Romantic poets, but particularly Donne. I remember Nigel declaring with great passion, "Yes, I am of the land of Shaw, Wilde, Yeats, Heaney, Longley, yes, and Lewis. I am of the land of all those people, but I am also of the land of Shakespeare, Donne, Pinter, Wordsworth." And I share that sense of place with Nigel. I share that sense of ownership, that I own Shakespeare as much as I own Shaw or Wilde. He is as much my property. He is not a stranger to me. He's part of what I know as where I come from. And irrespective of how people feel within themselves about their sense of whatever final constitutional arrangement, yawn, I cannot ever feel a stranger in any of the lands of these islands, whether it's Scotland, England, Wales, or Ireland, or Jersey, Guernsey, or the Isle of Man. I will never, ever feel a stranger, and always feel welcome. Yes, we have many shared difficulties. We have a colourful past. As the late Queen said when she addressed the dinner in Dublin Castle, we should think of the past but not dwell on it, when she touched upon the difficulties between Ireland and England. An old friend of mine, Pete St. John, died a few years ago. You may not know Pete St. John, but you all know the Fields of Athenry, because Pete wrote that song, The Fields of Athenry. And a lot of people think it's a very old Irish song. Well, it was written about 40 years ago by Pete St. John. And Pete penned many other songs. And one of the songs he wrote was called The Shamrock and the Rose. A somewhat sentimental. Matter of fact, all his songs were very sentimental. Well, everything Irish is sentimental, but all Pete's songs were sentimental. Fair enough. But his song, The Shamrock and the Rose, gives a sort of Pete St. John poetic insight into, in a simplistic way, into that relationship between England and Ireland. I'm not going to sing it for you. I'm just going to read you some of the words. One day as I walked through a garden of flowers, for nature her beauty bestowed, and among the green bushes I wandered my way, I noticed a shamrock and a rose. For the flowers were all blooming and shouting away in a low and a deep tone of their own, and the shamrock was pleading its own country's cause to the rose in her heartbroken tone. If my love of you were treasure, forgive me this pleasure. I stood by your side, I defeated your foes, said Ireland's green shamrock to England's red rose. Amen.